All right. Good evening. We appreciate everyone being here. I recognize the fact that I had not in 2 council meetings called a roll of the council or checked with wards if you're here. I laughed and I said I can count to 3 even if sometimes I can't read what's in front of me, but I can still count. But I will do that. Ward 1. Ward 2 is not here yet. Ward 3?
Here.
Ward 4?
Here.
Mayor's here. I declare that we have a quorum. We are set to have a special call meeting of the City Council at 5:30, and I will call this meeting to order. Second item on the agenda is parliamentary procedure training. And I think we have to decide whether we're going to get out of the way and sit out there or whether we're going to sit here and look at that. I'm going to go out there and sit.
Do that screen bigger for us.
Yep.
Well, I just would like to say that I have a book of Katie's that I'm returning.
And I have it on my iPad, Robert's rules. Here you go. So everybody should have a packet with 4 handouts. That was my bad. There we go. Okay. Okay. Do y'all want to come out here so I don't have my back to you? Yeah, that would make me happy. And trust me, my husband likes for me to be happy. Okay. Well, I want to thank y'all for having me, and I want to thank Teresa for bringing me down. I have been here. I took a day of vacation today, and I came down Saturday. I have shopped and eaten in your fair city and spent some money, more than I should have. And but I've had a really good time. It's a really beautiful place. This is a great facility, by the way. I love it. And I'm happy to see my friend Mike. We've been friends forever. And Richard, it's great to see you. We've been friends for, I don't know how long, a long time. So it's really great to be here. We're going to talk about parliamentary procedure. But before we get started, I kind of want to, where's my PowerPoint? We will kind of want to see how much y'all already know. Okay, we're going to back up. Let's see how much y'all already know. We're going to take a little test. That's why I wanted everybody to have a pen. So here we go. Put down what you think the right answer is. The main motion is one that A, brings business before an assembly, B, can be made while another motion is pending, and C, has the highest rank. Write down what you think the answer is, please. Two, motions are brought before the assembly by these 3 steps. A member A obtains the floor, addresses the chair, and makes a motion. B addresses the chair, makes a motion, the chair states the question. Or C makes a motion, another member seconds it, and the chair states the question. Write down what you think the answer is, A, B, or C. Okay. The next one. A second implies that the seconder, A, agrees that the motion should come before the assembly, agrees with the content of the motion, or C, wishes to speak second in debate. Is it A, B, or C? Okay. The lack of a second has become immaterial. A, after the chair has stated the question. B, after debate has begun. C, when the maker of the motion asks for permission to withdraw it. Is it A, B, or C? Unless there is a rule to the contrary, a member may speak twice during the same day, twice on the same question on the same day, or C, once on each question during the same day. Is it A, B, or C? And by the way, I've looked at your standing rules, and you do use Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, so we're good. A, B, or C? Okay, moving on to number 6. In a series of motions where all are pending and in order, which of the following would be voted on first? The previous question, sometimes known as call the question, limit debate, or postpone indefinitely? Is it A, B, or C? Okay. Number 7. With a main motion pending and a motion to amend pending, which of the following motions would be out of order? A, lay on the table. B, limit or extend limits of debate. Or C, postpone indefinitely. Is it A, B, or C? Are y'all having fun yet? Number 8. An incidental main motion, A, relates to the business of the assembly or its past or future action. B, is incidental to the pending question. C, must be germane to the original main motion. Is it A, B, or C? Sir, if you could grab a set of handouts. There's pink, blue, green, and a copy of the PowerPoint. Oh, that must be a council member. Oh, okay. Oh, the chief of police. Chief, Mike did it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, got it. Okay. Number 9, in amending, a maximum of how many alternatives can be pending at one time? Is it A1, B2, C3, or D4? In amending, a maximum of how many alternatives can be pending at one time? And we're going to learn all of this today. Okay? You're going to learn every bit of this. But I like to start off this way to see how knowledgeable everybody is, so I know if I can skip some of the basic stuff. Okay, last question, number 10. The motion to amend takes precedence over the motion to postpone to a certain time. A, if a motion to amend is pending. B, if it is a motion to amend the motion to postpone when it is immediately pending. C, under no circumstances. And D, if it is a privileged motion to amend. Is it A, B, C, or D? Okay, we're going to go back over these real quick and see how y'all did. Okay, number 1. The main motion is one that, what do you think is the answer? A, B, or C? Okay, the answer is A, brings business before an assembly. Actually, you will learn today that in the order of precedence with ranking motions, the main motion actually has the lowest rank. Okay? Everybody always thinks it has the highest rank, but it does not. Okay. Hello, ma'am. Could you grab a set of handouts, please? Oh, welcome, Mayor. If you would get pink, all of those handouts. There's pink, blue, green, and a copy of the PowerPoint. Okay, number 2. Motions are brought before the assembly by these 3 steps. A member, is it A, B, or C? I'm sorry? A. The answer is C. The answer is C. Makes a motion, another member seconds it, and the chair states the question. That's how business is brought before an assembly. Number 3, this is one of my favorites. A second implies that the seconder is at A, B, or C. A, B, or C. A is correct. Simply means that the motion should come before the assembly. We're going to talk about this too. Number 4, the lack of a second is another one of my favorites. The lack of a second has become immaterial. Is it A, B, or C? The answer is B. The answer is B. Once debate has begun, and you're going to learn about this, and we're going to talk about Teresa and the way she keeps the minutes when this happens. Number 5, unless there is a rule to the contrary, a member may speak. Is it A, B, or C? Rules of debate we're going to talk about today. Rules of debate. When applied appropriately, your meetings will become much more streamlined. It's B. Under Roberts, you can speak twice on the same question or motion on the same day. Okay? Well, there's a way around that, and we're going to talk about that. So, number 6, in a series of motions where all are pending and in order, which of the following would be voted on first? Is it A, B, or C? How many of you don't have a clue? You're guessing A? Well, that's a good guess. It's A. Previous question. Also known as call the question. And we're going to talk about how to appropriately use that motion today. Okay? And how to apply the precedence of motions. Okay, number 7. With a main motion pending and a motion to amend pending, which of the following motions would be out of order? A, B, or C? Oh, I'm so sorry. A, B, or C? It's C. You've sat through this with me before. Number 8, an incidental main motion, is it A, B, or C? It's B. I'm sorry, it's A. It's A. An incidental main motion relates to the business of the assembly or its past or future action. An incidental motion is about how you do things, not what you do. We'll talk about that too. I'm so sorry, it's A. Number 9, in amending, a maximum of how many alternatives can be pending at one time? In amending. A, B, C, or D? A, B, C, or D? It is C. 3. You can have a main motion, a primary amendment, and a secondary amendment. Tertiary amendments are not allowed under Robert's rules. We'll talk about that too. Number 10, the motion to amend takes precedence over the motion to postpone to a certain time. Is it A, B, C, or D? That's one of those like, who knows? Yeah. What do y'all think? A, B, C, D? It's B. That is correct. The answer is B. Okay. So, how did you do? Did you do as well as you thought you would, or? Okay. So the good news is today, through the course of this training, you're going to learn every bit of that and why those answers are what they are. So today, there's 4 main things that I want you to leave here with. Number 1 is how to properly apply the precedence of motions. If you know how to properly apply the precedence of motions, which is on this pink piece of paper, you can run a meeting very efficiently. Everything you really need to know to run a council meeting or a board or commission meeting is on this pink piece of paper. Second thing I want to talk to y'all about is how to properly amend a motion. A lot of times it is not handled appropriately. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the 4 most commonly misused motions and how to properly use them. And we're going to talk about rules of debate and how to properly apply rules of debate to make your meetings more efficient. Okay? So let's just start off with some basics. We know what it is. It's an organized system that protects the rights of everybody involved, the majority, the minority, everybody that's all working together. Now, Henry M. Roberts, we know, is the author of Robert's Rules of Order, and he was from England, and that's why it's called parliamentary law, because parliamentary procedure was based upon the actions of Parliament. One thing that people don't know about him, so here's your trivia for the day, he was an engineer by trade. And Henry Robert actually designed the Galveston seawall. So I couldn't find anything he did in Rockport, but he did design the Galveston seawall. Now today you're going to hear me mention several types of motions. If you don't know the purpose of those at the time, excuse me, my husband's calling me and he knows I'm here teaching this class. He's in so much trouble. You're going to hear me mention several types of motions. If you don't know what I'm talking about at the time, just hold on and we will get there. Also, you're going to hear me talk about the chair, and of course, mayor. That's used interchangeably, chair, mayor, chair of committees. I don't know, do you have any committees where you have a president of the committee? But, well, anyway, chair, mayor, president, it's all the same. And also, you're going to hear me talk about interchangeable terms for a motion, which are motion, question, or proposition. All means the same thing, okay? So, as I mentioned, it's a very organized system that allows a group of people to come together and make decisions. And if you apply it appropriately, will help you streamline your meetings and be much more efficient. Now, something we have to talk about is the Texas Open Meetings Act. It always takes precedence over parliamentary procedure. There are things that are allowed in Roberts that we can't do as a government, as a governing body, as a governmental entity. For example, Roberts has some provisions for voting by proxy, and we know we can't do that, although I know there's some people that would like to do that. But you can't vote by proxy and you can't vote by secret ballot. We know that we can't do that under the Open Meetings Act. And some of the things that's also allowed in Roberts we can't do in terms of our agenda that we prepare and post. We can't just put old business, unfinished business, new business. We know we can't do that. We have to word our agendas in a way that the public knows what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk also a little bit later about certain types of motions that will impact the wording on your next agenda. So we'll cover that in a little bit. Now, there's two classes of rules. There's general rules, which are those that are commonly applied. In this case, Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. This is the current edition. It's the 12th edition. It's the current one. The way to know if you have the current edition is every year there's a federal census, a new Roberts comes out. Every 10 years they update it. Okay? So make sure you have the latest version. Then you have special rules, and Teresa sent me your special rules, and I want to tell you they're very, very well written. You've got some really good standing special rules for your operation, for your conduct of your meetings. When your special rules are silent, then you look to your general rules. So if your special rules don't address a certain type of procedure for your meeting, then look to Roberts, and that's what you will follow. And I think yours is in policy form, ordinance. Yours is in an ordinance, right? So you can find those in cities and just in policy and an ordinance, or those types of things. So consult those first. If they're silent, then go to your general rules. Now, before we move on, I want to talk to you just a little bit about some tools. Of course, you need this, but nobody wants to read all that. I get it. So there's Robert's Rules in Brief. I love this one. You can tell I use it. It says a lot about me, the Complete Idiot's Guide. I love this one. It's very simple to read. I get it. Parliamentary Procedure in Local Government. Teresa, you can get this from NAP. Okay? And then I have this little set of index cards that's got everything in it. the precedence of motions, how to handle a motion, what's a 2/3 vote, da-da-da-da-da. This came from the National Association of Parliamentarians, and they're for you, Mayor. You're welcome. So those are some little tools that will help you with your meetings. Okay, let's move on. The 10 Commandments of Parliamentary Procedure. The organization is paramount as opposed to the individual. All members are equal. A quorum must be present to take legal action. Of course, we know for your city council, that's 3 people, right? Only one main proposition or motion can be on the floor at a time. Now, notice I said only one main motion can be on the floor at a time. You may have a whole lot of motions pending, but only one main motion can be pending at a time. Only one member can have the floor at a time. Full debate is allowed on all questions unless parliamentary rules do not allow debate on a question or discussion of a motion. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The issue and not the person is always what is under discussion. A question once decided cannot come back before the same group in the same session in the same form except by use of reconsideration. Now let's talk about reconsideration for just a minute. I never recommend it. Your city attorney's not here, right? I don't recommend the use of reconsideration for a body that is subject to the Open Meetings Act. Do you televise your meetings? Broadcast on the internet? Okay. So, you may have people that are present for a particular agenda item. I know in my city, a lot of people, will come for one item that they're interested in. When the council's done with that item, they leave. Or people at home turn off their TV or stop watching the stream on their computer. And then if you take it back up and reconsider it in that same meeting, you might have some really angry people. So it's legal to do, but it's not a good thing to do for bodies that are subject to the Open Meetings Act. It's just something that I think is important, that the public know what you're doing, and they don't want to think, oh, well, we all got up and left, so then they went and did the opposite of what we thought they did. And use of reconsideration, there's a lot of rules with it, so I don't recommend it unless you absolutely have to. And then silence gives consent. Now, what does that mean by silence gives consent? Now, it's my understanding that y'all conduct roll call votes here for all of your votes, correct, Mayor? Okay. And if somebody is going to abstain, they say I abstain? Okay. Well, what I mean by silence gives consent is on a general consensus item or an item that has little significance to the meeting. Let's say you've got 15 items on the agenda. Number 12, there's a whole lot of citizens here about number 12, okay? Well, if the mayor wanted to, he could say, because it's his meeting, it's the council's meeting. That's one thing we need to talk about. It's your meeting, and he runs it. The citizens don't run it. They get to come, they get to participate, but they don't run your meeting, okay? So you want to make sure that you're courteous to people. So the mayor might want to say, oh gosh, most of these people here are about agenda item 12. If there's no objection from the council, let's take the agenda out of order and do number 12 next. And if nobody objects, then silence gives consent. So that's what we mean by that. It doesn't apply to a formal vote, although we're going to talk about it later. Because in a formal vote, if you don't vote yes and you don't vote no, you've abstained when it's a formal vote. This isn't a formal vote. Okay, if you're ever in a meeting and can't remember the rule that applies, ask yourself these 3 questions. What's the fairest thing to do? The most logical thing to do, because Roberts, when you use this pink piece of paper and apply it appropriately, it's very logical. And what is the most efficient way of doing things? In parliamentary procedure, you deal with one thing at a time. You deal with one thing at a time. And we're going to learn all about that. So how does it work? Basic parliamentary procedure. To become an act or choice of the body, a proposition or called a motion is adopted by a majority vote. Direct approval registered by more than half of the members present and voting, unless more than a simple majority is required. Now, a simple majority for your council is 3, right? But I'm going to tell you now, anytime a motion deals with the rights of the members of the council or the board, if it deals with the rights of the members, it's going to take a 2/3 vote to pass, which means twice as many people vote yes as voted no. That's how you calculate quickly a 2/3 vote, and you have a chart there. Anytime it deals with the rights of the members. Now, one exception to that I found in your special rules, and that is suspension of your rules. Your standing rules say that the rules can be suspended by 3 members, which is a simple majority. But otherwise, if it's not suspension of the rules, then you have a 2/3 vote on other types of motions that deal with the rights of the members. So, for example, if you had already closed Here Citizens and you have moved on and you're in the middle of your agenda and the council is doing its work and some citizen wants to speak, that shouldn't happen at that point unless there's a motion and a second and it carries with 3 people voting yes to let that, because you're suspending your rules. It's suspension of the rules for you all. Typically, if 2 people voted no, that you wouldn't get there, right, with a 5-member council. But anytime it deals with the rights of the members, other than suspension of the rules, because you have a special standing rule, it's going to take a 2/3 vote. So remember that, because we're going to talk about it later. In a properly called meeting, and for us, a properly posted meeting under TOMA, where a quorum is present. So how does it work? Well, it's real simple. You always start with a main motion, which is a formal proposal that certain action be taken. Where's my police chief? I always use you as an example. I move that we buy 6 police cars. So, I move that we buy 6 police cars. I just made a main motion. It introduced new business to the assembly, right? Okay. And to do that, I have to get the mayor's attention or the chair's attention. He assigns me the floor. Some cities are very formal, some aren't. But council members would look at the mayor and say, Mayor, and if he looks at you and says, Jim or whatever, you've got the floor. Do you do it very formally? Do you say council member X has the, doesn't matter. You can do it the way you want to. Just obtain the floor, assign the floor, and then the person can make their motion. I move that we buy 6 police cars. Police chief, who doesn't get a vote, seconds it. Seriously, no. No. Then another member seconds the motion. I second the motion. It's very simple. Or just say second, Then the mayor restates it. It has been moved and seconded that we purchase 6 police cars. Now, then the mayor will allow debate. And with debate, the maker of the motion always gets to speak first if they want to. They don't have to speak. But if they want to, the maker of the motion has the right to speak first when debate starts. And we're going to talk about rules of debate in a little bit, about how debate is supposed to work. Then the chair, when it appears that debate is finished, the chair puts forward the question. He takes the vote and then he announces the results. For example, the ayes have it and the motion is carried. Now, when can you withdraw a motion? Do y'all ever withdraw motions? Yes? When can you, under Roberts, withdraw a motion? You're close. It's actually before the mayor states the question. So when I move we buy 6 police cars, I second the motion. Once the mayor says it has been moved and seconded that we buy 6 police cars, the motion no longer belongs to the maker of the motion. It now belongs to the group. The whole group owns that. And let's say you start debate and the maker of the motion decides he really didn't want to make the motion. You have two choices at that point. You can debate it and vote it down. Or if the group agrees to allow the withdrawal of the motion, you can allow it. So you would if Councilmember Smith said, well, I'd really like to withdraw my motion. If the rest of the group does not object, this is an instance where silence can give consent. If the rest of the group doesn't object, you can consider the motion withdrawn. However, if one council member objects to the withdrawal of the motion, you need to put it to a vote, and a simple majority will withdraw it. Now, you don't have to ask the person that seconded the motion, are you okay with the withdrawal of the motion? What they think doesn't matter at that point. If they want to object, they can object, there'll be a vote, but you don't have to ask their permission to consider the withdrawal of a motion. So that's when you properly do it and how you do it if you're past the point of stating the question. Do y'all have any questions about that? Okay, one other thing, and this drives me batty. Once the vote has been taken and the mayor says, the motion carries, it's over. There's no more discussion on that. You got to have a motion on the floor for the council to have something to discuss, right? So it's over. That is not the time that a member of the group gets to say, well, I voted no because, I don't think we have money for 6 police cars. That's why I voted no. It's not that I don't support the police. The time for that person to say that was during debate. Once he says the motion carries or fails, you don't get to explain why you voted the way you did. If you want to explain it, do it during one of your turns during debate. Okay? Now, no second, no debate. To second a motion simply means that you believe the motion is worthy of discussion and consideration. It doesn't mean you agree with it necessarily. If you don't want the motion considered, then nobody should say one word. Okay? Because here's what happens. Councilmember Smith says, I move that we buy 6 police cars. And Councilmember Jones immediately says, now, Jim, we can't afford 6 police cars this year. Well, guess what Councilmember Jim just did? He seconded the motion through debate. Obviously, he thought it was worthy of discussion, or he wouldn't have said anything. So Teresa over here is going to say, Councilmember Jones seconded the motion through debate. Now, I can tell you, my city council, when they figured that out, when I pointed out, they would say, well, they sat there and talked for 15 minutes. They said, well, there was no second. Well, yeah, there was. The first one of you that started talking after somebody made the motion seconded the motion. That's all it means. It doesn't mean you agree with it. It means I think it's worthy of us talking about and considering it. So when they learn that that person got charged with the second, now when they don't want to take it up, they get real tiny and real quiet. They don't say a word. So if you don't want to consider it, don't say a word, and it's not considered for lack of a second. There'll be a few privilege type motions that don't require a second. We'll talk about that later. Okay. We're going to talk about, yeah. Well, not if he doesn't want to talk about it. He wouldn't second it. If you made the motion and the mayor's sitting over here going, holy cow, we can't afford that, He, well, yeah, there'll be an agenda item. There'll be an agenda item. Consider approval to purchase 6 police cars at a cost of $57,000 each. I know it's more than that. That's just an old figure in my head. Okay. I need to update that, don't I? So you've made that motion. If none of the rest of them say one word, the mayor will say that motion will not be considered due to the lack of a second. But if somebody starts talking about it and says to you, you know, we can't afford that this year, they have seconded the motion through debate. And then you have to proceed with the disposal of that motion, one way or another. Okay? Make sense? Good question. And yeah, people learn real quick once they get credited with a motion they didn't want a second through debate, they don't say another word. Okay, let's talk about types of motions for a minute. There's 5 categories of motions. A main motion we talked about, and you may want to get out your pink piece of paper. Okay? The main motion brings business before the assembly. In our case, we're talking about, I move we buy 6 police cars. It introduced new business to the group, okay? Then there's subsidiary motions, and they aid in treating or disposing of a main motion. And those include amend, commit, or refer to a committee, postpone, limit or extend limits of debate, previous question, or I call the question, or the motion to table, which we're going to talk about at length in a little bit. Then there are privilege motions, and they don't relate to the main motion, but relate directly to the members of the organization. For example, Mayor, I rise to a question of privilege I cannot hear. You can't expect me to participate in this meeting if I can't hear. That needs to be addressed. Doesn't require a second. It's called a question of privilege. There's some privilege motions out there. That's just one example. Then there's incidental motions, and they are incidental to the conduct of the meeting rather than directly to the main motion. They don't deal with the subject before you, but how you do your business. And some of those examples are division of the question, which is in your standing rules, which I've never seen, which I think is great. Parliamentary inquiry, suspension of the rules. There's no order of precedence, and they arise out of other motions or items of business. And we're going to go over all this in a little bit, so don't get real confused yet. And then there's the infamous motions that bring a question again before the assembly, known as bring back motions. And those are take from the table, reconsider, we've talked about that a little bit, or rescind something previously adopted. Those are the 5 categories of motions. And rather than spend a lot of time on that right now, just stick with your pink sheet of paper. We'll get there in a minute. So a motion is considered pending when it has been stated by the mayor and has not yet been disposed of either permanently or temporarily. You can temporarily set aside something or put something, if you will, away temporarily, but it is considered pending when it was the last question stated. So while a motion is pending or on the floor, members can amend it, postpone it, put it aside, send it to a committee through the use of a secondary motion. And a motion is considered immediately pending when several motions are pending, and it is the motion that was last stated by the chair and will be the first to be disposed of. So we're going to get to it in a minute with our pink piece of paper. Secondary motions can be made while the main motion is pending and relate to business already before the group, to questions of order or procedure, or to matters of comfort or privilege. Okay, before we move on to how to apply the precedence of motions, I want to spend a little bit of time talking to y'all about amending a motion. And what is it? Motion to amend is simply a motion to modify the wording and within certain limits the meaning of a pending motion before the pending motion itself is acted upon. So how many of you have seen this scenario? I move that we buy 6 police cars. Second. Mayor, I don't think, during debate, Mayor, I don't think we can afford 6 police cars. I move to strike 6 and insert the word 4. Second. So you have a motion to amend. Okay? Well, a lot of times what you see in a group is that they dispose of the motion to amend. So you vote on it first. And let's say that motion to amend passed. Our motion to amend to strike 6 and insert the word 4. Let's say it passed. What should happen next? Huh? Well, if the motion to amend passed, 6 cars doesn't exist anymore. But you do have to go back and take up that motion, main motion, as amended. Just because the amendment passed doesn't adopt the order of the business itself. All you've really done with that amendment is approve the word 4. Okay? So if the motion to amend to strike 6 and insert 4, because we can't really afford 6 police cars, even at $57,000, if it passes, then the mayor says, now we will take up the main motion as amended, which now reads to buy 4 police cars. Okay? And then you have to vote on that main motion. Now, if the motion to amend to strike 6 and insert 4 failed, you still have to take up the main motion. Either way, the main motion has to be taken up. Otherwise, you've done nothing. Okay? And too many times what we see in groups is that they move on. Once the amendment has been disposed of, they think they're done and you're not. Okay? So let's talk about characteristics of amendments. They can be applied to any motion having a variable factor. What's our variable factor? I move we buy 6 police cars. What's the variable factor? 6, the number 6. That's correct. It's not in order when another has the floor. It's debatable when the main motion is debatable. Of course, when you're debating a motion to amend, your debate needs to be limited to the merits of the motion to amend. In our case, we're going to talk about the merits of buying 4, not 6, 4, because that's what's on the floor. Cannot stand by itself. Oh, and here's a tidbit I skipped. A motion to amend only requires a majority vote, even if the main motion requires a greater than a simple majority, a 2/3 vote. We have zoning. Do y'all have zoning? You know, in my city, there's certain types of things, like if we get a protest, a valid protest, where we have to have a 3/4 vote. So you can have a motion to amend on a rezoning main motion. The motion to amend will always only require a majority, but that main motion is still going to take a 3/4 vote. Okay? For us. Now, I don't know how it is for you, but that's when we have a protest. Got it? Okay? It can't stand by itself, and it's the only motion that may be applied to itself. We can have a primary amendment and a secondary amendment, but praise Jesus, tertiary amendments are not allowed under Robert's rules. So you can have, when we talked earlier, one of your questions was how many forms of a motion or how many variations of a motion can you have pending at one time, and the answer was 3. Main motion, primary amendment, secondary amendment. That's it. And that's good. A member may amend their own motion, and the chair can assist with wording an amendment. A member's vote on the amendment does not obligate their vote on the main motion. You may want to vote yes on the amendment and no on the main motion, and you can do that. Either way. Rejection of the main motion to amend leaves pending the motion as originally proposed. That's what I told you. If the amendment fails, you still have that main motion you have to take up and handle. The adoption of the amendment does not adopt the main motion. Either way, pass or fail with the amendment, you still got to take up that main motion and address it either as amended by the amendment that passed or as it was originally stated if your amendment failed. Does that make sense? And a lot of people don't do that. They think the adoption of the amendment or the rejection of the amendment, they're done and they move on. And guess what? They have nothing. Okay. Forms of amendments. You can insert a word, consecutive words, or paragraphs, strike them out, strike out and insert, which is what we did. And you can substitute, but it must be germane, especially for us under the Texas Open Meetings Act. Let's say old council member Smith got a ticket and he is really mad at y'all, chief. So, but Councilmember Smith loves parks and playgrounds, okay? So he cannot move to substitute playground equipment for police cars. It's not germane to the main motion. And under Texas Open Meetings Act, we know that's not allowed, right? Because we would have to post that we were going to consider park equipment. So that's a double strike there, if you will. Now, also, the mayor is not going to entertain a motion that is the exact opposite of the main motion. So our main motion, I move that we buy 6 police cars. And Councilmember Smith's mad, and he says, I move to amend by inserting the word not in front of purchase. Okay? You're not going to entertain that either because it's the opposite. If Councilmember Smith truly believes it's a bad idea to buy those 6 police cars, then during debate, he has the chance to convince his fellow council members it's a bad idea, and they'll vote it down. But he can't amend it that way, all right? And then the other thing that this mayor is not going to ever do is allow an amendment that's dilatory. For example, he's not going to let Councilmember Smith, that's still mad at you about that ticket, insert the word pink in front of police cars through an amendment. He's not going to entertain that, okay? So that's good news. Any questions about amending? Here's some pitfalls. Allowed when another member has the floor. Debate is not contained to the pending amendment. A question already decided. If it's already been decided, don't let somebody try to use an amendment to get business back before the group. We talked tertiary amendments are not allowed. Not germane to the main motion or the primary amendment. Equivalent to rejection of the main motion, we talked about that. Dilatory, new business, our playground equipment, introduced under the pretext of being an amendment, or changing one parliamentary motion to another. Those are not allowed. Now, here's another thing that really gets my goat. So, somebody has made the motion, and it's been seconded, okay? And then you're debating, and then somebody makes an amendment, motion to amend, and it's seconded. You don't ever look to the person who made the original main motion and said, is it okay with you if they amend the motion? Well, who cares? I mean, they get to vote yes or no, right? That member has a right to move to amend as long as the motion to amend is in order. You don't ask the permission of the person that made the main motion. You just don't. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a right to make a motion to amend, so don't do that. I'll come up here and scold y'all. Uh-oh. So, because, for one thing, that motion doesn't even belong to them anymore. Remember we talked about withdrawal of a motion? So, the person that makes the main motion, nobody needs to ask their permission to make a motion to amend. That's your right as a member, okay? Did y'all know that? Is that new? All right. Any questions about amending? Y'all got it? When you've got one motion to amend and a main motion, how many votes are you going to take every single time? You're going to vote on that amendment, and you're going to vote on the main motion, either as amended or as left as originally made if the amendment fails. So 2 times. Now, this little pink piece of paper. This pink piece of paper has everything you need to run a meeting. And it's on your cards as well, Mayor, for you to put at your place. So, on this sheet of paper, the top half of this is what we call ranking motions. Half. You'll see ranking motions. And we talked about the main motion earlier, and I told you it had what kind of rank? It was the lowest rank. Okay? So the premise of this is on the ranking motions at your top half. You start with the main motion, and you make subsidiary motions moving up the chart. You make subsidiary motions moving up only. You dispose of them one at a time, working down the chart. And we're going to have a little skit. I'm going to show y'all how it works. So you make them only moving up, and you make them moving down one at a time. When you are making motions, anything above the immediately pending motion is in order. Anything below the immediately pending motion is out of order. And we're going to have a little practice here. Now, non-ranking motions at the bottom are simply that. They don't have a rank. Most of those are incidentals, and they fit into how you do business more than content of business. But that top half is ranking. So we're going to learn how to use it. Okay, can y'all see my ladder? So again, let me see if I can get this. You make motions one at a time, moving up. You dispose of them one at a time, going down. Okay, we're going to have a little fun, and we're going to have a little skit. So, Mayor, if you'd come up here, and you're the mayor. Who wants to be council member A? I need somebody to come be council member A. Council member A? Now, if y'all will indulge me, I would like Mike Donahoe to be council member B because I'm going to insult him. So, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with council member B. Who wants to be council member C? How about you, ma'am? Will you come up and be council? Who wants to be council member D? Come on. And Teresa, will you be our parliamentarian? Well, there's your little script. So y'all come up. So, Mayor, I'm going to interrupt you as you go through the script, okay? And as you go through the script, I'm going to show y'all on the screen with this fancy little green pointer what's happening, okay? So, Mayor, I'm going to interrupt you periodically, but take away. And everybody, does everybody see their part? Your part should be highlighted in yellow. And don't forget to vote, okay? Okay, Mayor. Okay, so let me interrupt. Are we okay? What did we just do? Oops. Come on. We introduced new business right here in the form of a main motion, all right? Our lowest ranking. See where we are? We're at the bottom of the ladder. Okay, Mayor. Okay, so council member B is going along with everything so far. Okay, so was waffling. Yes, so was that motion to amend to strike the word 6 and insert the word 4 in order? Yes, and what, golly, why is that? Yeah, so here's where we were, and we just had a primary amendment. It was above the immediately pending motion, which means what? It's in order. So far, we're good. Okay, Mayor. There he goes. Councilmember B, blowing in the breeze. So, we just had Councilmember C that moved to amend the amendment by striking the word for and inserting the word to. Was that in order? Was it in order? Oh, golly, I keep hitting that wrong button, y'all. Sorry. Yes, it was in order because we were right here. The primary amendment was right here. We were sitting right here. She made a secondary amendment, a motion for a secondary amendment. Because it was above our immediately pending motion, it was in order. So it was in order. Okay. Mayor, I believe the police department staff will understand the tough budget crunch we are facing.
Mayor, I think we need more information about what impact this actually will have on our police department's ability to deliver the law.
Okay. So we just had a motion to postpone consideration of this item until the next meeting in order to allow time to gather more information about the budgetary impact and the impact on the police department. So, was it in order? Oh, yeah, it was. So you were sitting here at secondary amendment. The motion to postpone is above it. So guess what? It's in order. You make motions going up. Okay? We were here, and we have a motion to postpone. So that motion is in order. Okay? Go ahead, Mayor. Okay. So, we just had a motion to refer or commit to the Finance Committee. Was it in order? No. Why? That's right. It is below our immediately pending motion. You can't make motions below the immediately pending motion. Only above. So, what's going to happen next? What? Okay.
Mayor, may I advise the chair that the motion to refer or commit is out of order?
Now, yeah. Here we are. We're still right here, okay? Okay, go ahead, Mayor. Councilmember B doesn't even know where he is most of the time. So that motion failed. The motion to commit or refer to the motion to postpone consideration to the next meeting failed. So it's gone. So where are we now? We're going back down to the immediately pending motion now, which is the secondary amendment, because this one's been disposed of.
One moment, sir, let me look at my pink cheat sheet. Mayor, the immediately pending motion is the motion to amend the amendment to the main motion by striking the words for and inserting the word to.
I think it's unanimous. Should be. Well, anyway, so where are we? We just disposed of the secondary amendment and it passed, right? Now what do we have to do? We got to go to the immediately pending motion below it, which is the primary amendment as amended, right? Because that secondary amendment passed. So now we take up the primary amendment as amended. Okay, so what just happened? Dadgummit. Yeah, we have taken care of the primary amendment and it passed, right? The primary amendment as amended passed. So we still have to take up the main motion as amended, right? Because otherwise, if you don't, what do you have? Nothing. That's right. Okay, Mayor.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
Motion.
Okay, that's our skit. Now, does that make sense to y'all when you see it act? Thank y'all. Thank you, actors. Thank you, Council Member B. You know, we've always known that Mike is a little flaky. So 2 is better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, right, Chief? Not the way it works.
There was no, you were out of order, no debate.
So, keep this in front of you. When you make motions, make them, start with your main motion and make them going up. And look, you know, most people don't have secondary amendments. My council does once in a while. But, you know, usually if you're going to have an amendment, it's one amendment. But make motions moving up on the ranking motions and dispose of them one at a time coming down. Any motion above the immediately pending motion is in order. Anything below it is out of order. And you take care of one item at a time. It's really very simple. And this chart tells you when you need a second, if it's a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. And a 2/3 vote is needed for what? Rights of the members. That's right. You're going to deal with the rights of the members.
Get this right, our city attorney is going to be so impressed.
Well, let's impress him then, shall we? This is all you need. And I think she should get it. I make that motion. So, all right. So that pink piece of paper will get you through every meeting. Just keep it in front of you and use it. Any questions before we move on? All right. Let's talk about debate. What is it? Well, Roberts says that debate is a discussion regarding a motion that occurs after the presiding officer has restated the motion and before putting it to a vote. So let's talk about when the council talks among itself. Okay. We know that under Here Citizens on non-agenda items, you're not going to be responded to them because it's not on the agenda, right? And you have, I read in your rules, y'all have 30 minutes set aside for that, correct? With a maximum of 3 per speaker. So you need to contain your citizens that wish to speak to that 30-minute time frame. Unless they're speaking on a public hearing or that's posted, you know, rezoning or something. Contain those citizens to that time to speak. It's your meeting. You're still being courteous to them. You're still allowing them to participate during this time frame that's set aside. It's not their meeting, so You know, Joe Blow at the back of the room shouldn't take control of the meeting by shouting out stuff. You know, the mayor will say, I'm sorry, sir, you're out of order. We've already had here citizens, and you'll move on.
Citizens have a right to speak after the motion is made and seconded and the council did debate.
Well, actually, do y'all allow citizens to speak on agenda items on each item? Ugh. Okay, so no. The way that it should work is if you're going to allow citizens to speak on each agenda item, and that's what y'all do, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. So, you know, a good thing to do, Mayor, if you want to think about it, and I'm not trying to tell you your business, but since I'm from out of town, I will. You know, if that seems to bog down your meetings and make your meetings drag on, what you might want to consider is 30 minutes for non-agenda items and 30 minutes for agenda items, and have everybody come up and speak about their agenda items first. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. However, once the council has made a motion and seconded it, you debate it with each other, not the audience, not anybody else. So the way that we do it is we make citizens speak at the beginning of the meeting unless it's a public hearing, okay? That way we keep it under control, but y'all can do it that way. So if you're going to do it where you're going to have them come up on the agenda item they want to speak on, have them come up. There's two ways you can go about it. Staff report. You can do the staff report first, where the council can ask questions of the staff member and then hear citizens, or you can flip it, do hear citizens first, then staff report. But before you get ready to start talking to one another as members of that body or that group, be it the Building and Standards Commission or the council or whatever, there needs to be a motion on the floor. Because otherwise y'all don't have anything to talk about to each other, right? So the mayor's going to call for a staff report, hear citizens, or flip it. Then when hear citizens on that item is over, you entertain a motion and a second, and then that's when the council talks to each other. You don't talk to each other till you have a motion on the floor. Otherwise, you don't have anything to talk about.
Whereas if staff gave reports, citizens came up, and then council already had a feeling that this was going to be a very contentious issue, and have made their own decision, like, we really don't need to consider this tonight. So no motion was made, it dies, and move on to the next agenda.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways to handle that, and we're going to talk about that in the commonly misused meeting. But Teresa brings up the point. Let's say that y'all don't really want to bring it up or talk about it. Well, maybe the mayor says, okay, before the council can debate, we need a motion on the floor. If nobody wants to talk about it, then nobody says a word. And the mayor says, due to a lack of a motion, this item will not be considered, and you move on. Or you could entertain a motion to postpone consideration. Postpone consideration is one of two motions that can stand as an incidental main motion with no pending main motion. So in other words, if it was about police cars and let's say nobody wanted to really move that, you could move to postpone consideration, and we'll talk about that. We're going to go over, that's one of the 4 most commonly misused motions. So there's ways to get around it. But if you don't have a motion, there's nothing for the council members or the board members to talk about amongst themselves, because that's what they debate is the question, the motion. Now, once you have started that, it is out of order for citizens to chime in. That is your motion. It belongs to your body, and y'all are the ones that have the right to debate it. Their turn to talk is over.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Okay?
During citizens to be heard, they speak to the council does not reply.
Yeah, because usually it's not on the agenda and they can't reply. Right. allocate their time right after the citizens and say, okay, you can speak your piece on that agenda item. At that time, can the council hold a discussion with them? Okay, so let me see if I've got this right. You're going to get to an agenda item, and the mayor says the next item on the agenda. No, I'm wrong. Okay. 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 Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Hear citizens is simply that. Hear citizens. You're not there to debate with them. Now, if let's say there's somebody that has special knowledge about it, maybe it's the applicant for a rezoning request, and the council really wants to hear from them, but they didn't sign up to speak. When you get to that agenda item, you can suspend the rules and ask that applicant to come up and speak to you, and then you can ask them questions. But if it's strictly hear citizens, you're not there to debate with the citizens. You're there to debate with each other. So citizen Joe Blow comes up, they don't like the rezoning request, they complain about it, it's going to cause, let me think about our meetings. Drainage is going to get worse, traffic is going to get worse, pedestrians are going to get worse, the locusts are going to come, all that stuff. The mayor will say, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for your comments. And they're done.
They sign up, and I'm here to talk about item 1A.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have that item.
Uh-huh.
The have an open conversation.
No,
This
no,
has been
no, 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 no. The council, they have the right to speak.
okay.
Under the law, in a regular or special meeting with action items, they have a right to speak to agenda items, okay? They don't have the right under state law to speak on non-agenda items, but most cities allow it, okay, which is fine. Right, yeah, same public comment, hear citizens, same thing. Now, but you're not there to debate with them. You're there to hear them, and you hear what they have to say, but you shouldn't be having a back and forth with them. You're posted for public comment or hear citizens, as we call it. That means hear. Doesn't mean back and forth with Joe Blow, who's mad about the rezoning. Okay. Time them. Mm-hmm. You don't have to respond. And what the mayor could say is, we're here to hear from you. We don't answer questions at this time. The time for the council to speak will be when there's a motion on the floor. You can be very nice about it and very businesslike about it. But when you do that, they're controlling the meeting, not him. And he's in charge of this meeting, okay? It's your meeting. Actually, you really shouldn't. And what you may want to do is say, Mr. Buckner, we've heard your questions. We'll have staff follow up with you. Or your questions may be answered during our council discussion, which will occur when there's a motion on the floor. If you let them do that, they're controlling your meeting. And you're going to be here all night, first of all. And second of all, it could get to be where it's just chaos. I don't know. I haven't been to one of your meetings, but I can tell you, that's, and if you want to choose to let them come up to speak on that agenda item at that time about the police cars at that time, that's your choice. We don't. If you want to talk about something, you do it at the beginning of the meeting, unless it's a public hearing. Yeah. That's your choice. And
citizens heard, then have, hey, now you may speak on agenda items, and you may speak on whatever agenda item
Yeah.
you're speaking, and then
that's my opinion. And
staff
yeah. Yeah. So that's my opinion. Okay. Yeah. So in my opinion, that makes meetings more efficient. Everybody knows when they're going to get to speak. Joe's not going to get up 12 times and tie you up all night long. You know, there are some citizens that really like to hear themselves talk, right? We know them, right? And they're going to speak on every single item, and then they're going to try to engage you from the back of the room, and that should never be allowed, okay? The mayor has to assign the floor. The chair of that committee has to assign the floor. If it's a speaker coming up, a citizen, they still have to get the floor from the mayor or the chair of that committee. It's not mayhem. They don't get to shout from their chair. That is not the way it's not fair to the other citizens that are there either. You know, when you got a group of citizens over here that are interested in agenda item 42, and Joe over here just keeps on and on and on about agenda item 12, it's not fair, okay? And a cardinal rule about here citizens is everybody gets treated the same. So y'all's rules say 3 minutes or 30 minutes total. So if you have 15 speakers, they each get 2, right? Did I read that right? In your standing rules? Your standing rules talk about here citizens, 3 minutes, but a maximum of 30 minutes. So if 15 people sign up, that's 2 minutes each, right? Well, I read it and yep.
So if
And they can.
think about 3 different things, currently, we give them 3 minutes for item number A, 3 minutes for item number 10, and 3 minutes for item number 22. But if you're speaking at the beginning, you tell them you get 3 minutes to speak about any and all.
It's up to him. That's his call. So it's up to y'all how you run your meetings, but I can tell you that when you have here citizens on every single agenda item, it can really get messy. And if you want to do it that way, that's great, but have them come up, give them the floor, let them say their 3 minutes properly, in a proper way, in a respectful way, and then go sit down. When they sit back down, they're done on that agenda item. There's no shouting from their chair. There's no racing, asking questions. There's none of that. They're done. And the mayor can be very, very nice and say, I'm sorry, sir, but you've had your 3 minutes. We need to be fair to the others. And what happens is when you let Joe back there keep interrupting and asking questions, he may end up with 17 minutes he got, whereas Mary, who sat over here and minded the rules, she got 3. That's not right. That's unfair. So you have to think about that. So, you know, if you think it's working for you the way you're doing it, fine. I'm not telling you to change, but you may want to consider here citizens. And one of the things that we like about here citizens, when we have everybody come up and speak at the beginning, and we don't have the 30-minute time limit. If 40 people sign up, 40 people get signed up. We don't stop at 30 minutes. But your rules do say that. Yeah, it's in there. I read it today, and I thought, ooh, that's a great rule. But anyway, wish my mayor would do it. Actually, I text my mayor. I said, guess what? Guess what Rockport does? But anyway, if you do that, one of the things that we like about it is if Joe gets up and comes up and says stuff during his 3 minutes, our staff has time to prepare itself for a response when the council gets to the agenda item. That's one of the reasons we do it that way. It's the zoning and, well, it's not a good zoning's a public hearing. The police chief has time to go get a little more information about something that came up. Yeah. So, and then when you get to that agenda item and you have your staff report, y'all are ready for that question that citizen brought up or that statement that citizen. Does that all make sense? Ultimately, it's your decision, but but really and truly, no matter when they speak and they sit down and they don't say anything else. And don't engage them. If they try to yell out from their chair, hey, Mayor, blah, 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 and listen, we've got one. Oh, Lord, do we have one? We don't engage, and the mayor gives 3 warnings. Sir, you're out of order. You've had your 3 minutes, blah, blah, blah. If he keeps on yelling, and we think this is when he's off his meds, bless his heart. If he keeps on yelling and disrupting the meeting, the mayor says, sir, this is your 2nd warning. You are disrupting this meeting. The 3rd time, he's gone. 3rd time, he's gone. So the mayor gives 2, and then the 3rd time, he says to the police officer, would you please escort them from the building? That's the way we do it. So, and the mayor's only had to do that like twice because people catch on real quick. Oop, I better be nice or I'll be out of here. But you do have to let people speak. You don't have to let them say certain words, especially when you're streaming it live. And Lord knows we've had that happen. But, you know, the mayor's got to really keep a lid, or the chair of the committee keep a lid on that. And you don't need people. Something else, if somebody's shouting to y'all from the back of the room, you can hear them, but the people that are watching the stream can't hear them. Open meetings, y'all. So I hope that helps. I don't know if there's any questions. This is just some suggestions. But I do like the 30 minutes. I really do. So, but if you decide to move it up to the beginning about comments on agenda items, again, that does give your staff time to prepare for it to, when they give the staff report. So when you get to the agenda item, if you want to, have a staff report, get a staff report, council can ask questions to the staff member, but when you're ready to talk to each other as members of the body, you need a motion on the floor. Okay? Good discussion. Okay. A member can speak no more than twice on the same motion on the same day. That is a rule. So if you have a motion to buy 6 police cars and it's been seconded, each member gets to speak twice on that motion. Not 13 times, twice. We used to not apply rules of debate until a very, very young man, who you know who I'm talking about, was elected. And there was one night, we had a very simple motion, and he spoke 13 times to that motion. And the mayor looked over at me and said, Mary Lynn, starting next meeting, I need you to keep up with how many times each person has spoken, and I'm going to start enforcing the rules of debate. And there's times when maybe you do need to speak more than twice, and we'll talk about that. So each member gets to speak twice to each motion. That's it. Twice. That's the rights. No member can speak a second time on a motion so long as another member is requesting recognition to speak for the first time. Okay, so the mayor should look to the maker of the motion to speak first. If Councilmember Smith made the motion, you're going to look at Councilmember Smith and say, Joe, you made the motion, you get to talk first. If he doesn't have to, but he can if he wants to. So the maker of the motion gets to speak first and debate. Then before anybody gets to speak a second time, you need to make sure that everybody has had the opportunity to speak for the first time. They don't have to, but everybody gets to speak twice on that motion. And remember to keep your remarks to the merits of the question immediately before the group. Now, if the motion is, let's say, really controversial, or it's really complicated or something, and you decide that each council member speaking twice to that motion is not enough, then to speak more, you would entertain a motion to extend the limits of debate. Mayor, I move that we extend the limits of debate to allow each council member to speak one more time to this motion. It's going to take a second. And what kind of vote? 2/3, because the debate is a right. It is your right. So when we deal with the rights of the members, what do we need? A 2/3 vote. Yes, ma'am. So the mayor can entertain that motion. Mayor, I think we need more discussion. I move that we extend the limits of debate to allow each council member to speak once more to the motion, twice more to the motion. No one member should be able to hold the group hostage. Deals with the rights. It's going to take a second and a 2/3 vote. By the same token, let's say your football team's in the state playoff, or the Aggies are playing baseball. Whoop! At the World Series. Did they win today? Yes. I was here, so I wasn't really sure. Good deal. That's exciting. So let's say the Aggies are playing and everybody wants to get home. And let's say that you have a council member that really loves to hear themselves talk, and the one that likes to speak 13 times to a motion. So Mikey over here is on the council, and he's going to say, Mayor, I move that we limit debate to each council member being allowed to speak only once to this motion. Takes a second, and what kind of vote? 2/3. And if it passes, what does that mean? You only get to speak once. It's a really great motion when you want to go home and watch ball or go to the state championship or something. Yeah. You do. You do. No. You have to say whether it's one more time each, 2 more times each, or whatever. Same thing with limit debate. But everybody has to have at least one time. If it's a debatable motion.
Say 2 times to talk,
Uh-huh.
because it is a council debate.
Uh-huh.
Is it correct or correct to say, Chief, what was the number of that so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and expect a response from him? And then, well, what did you say that with the conversation with staff that way?
No. Debate is between each other, the members of the group, the members of the council, the member of the Building and Standards Commission. If you're talking to staff, that doesn't count. It's when you're talking to each other about that motion.
So when they have a motion, and there's a second, and they started the discussion, they can stop and address that.
If they need to, they can stop and, say, Mayor, what did the police chief say about that? Or, what did he say?
Not counted toward their time.
No. But if he talks about, well, the police chief said this, that does count. Okay? All right. So let's see. Yep. But suspend which rules?
Where you can only talk once. You make your motion and your second, and you started your debate, and they were going, look at the time, dude.
Yeah.
I need you to.
Yeah. You can be in the middle of debate, and at that point, you could entertain a motion to limit debate to 1 more time each. Yes, you can do that. All right, let's see. Any questions about debate? Here's an interesting tidbit. A member may not speak against his own motion. However, he may vote against it. Because through debate, guess what you learned? You learned your motion wasn't so good, okay? So yeah, you can do that. What's debatable? Every main motion is certainly debatable. The following subsidiary motions, you can talk about postponing indefinitely, amend, but remember, limit your discussion to the merits of the amendment, whether or not the wisdom referring it to a committee, postpone to a certain time. We're going to talk about all this in a minute. Incidental motions are debatable, and what's not debatable? You're not going to debate whether or not to limit or extend the limits of debate, right? We're not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. You cannot debate, I move the previous question, which we know as commonly, I call the question, and we're going to talk about it here in a second, or lay on the table. I move to table. The most commonly misused motion is lay on the table or I move to table. Privileged motions are not debatable. If Mike says he can't hear, he can't hear, even though he seconds every motion that ever comes before him. Okay? And take from the table and reconsider an undebatable motion, and nominations are not debatable. Okay? All right. On nominations? Yeah. Okay, we're going to get, that's next. We're moving on to the 4 most commonly misused motions. The 4 most commonly misused motions is lay on the table or I move to table, postpone indefinitely, postpone to a certain time, or I move the previous question, or as we commonly say, Mayor, I call the question. Okay, so let's talk about these one at a time. They are the 4 most commonly misused motions. So if you look at your pink sheet, you're going to see that the motion to lay on the table is a high-ranking motion, right? It can't be discussed or amended. And what is the purpose of it? How many of you have heard this? Mayor, I move that we table this until our next meeting. Have you heard that? Mayor, I move that we table this until we can get the consultant's report. Mayor, I move that we table this until we can get a report from the Finance Committee. Have you heard those things? Usually it's I move we table to the next meeting. All of those are wrong. That is not the proper use of the motion to table. The motion to table is meant to temporarily set something aside. If it was meant to kill it, because some people think the motion to table kills it, it doesn't. Oh no, you're going to see it again. So because why would there be a bring back motion if it was meant to kill? Because we have a motion called remove from the table. So what is the purpose of it? The purpose of to table has to be applied to a pending motion. Okay? It can't stand on its own. And it's not used to move something to a different time frame. This thing, I move that we table this to the next meeting. No. That's postponed to a certain time. So let me give you a perfect example. Do you remember Lindsay in planning? Okay. I don't know if you were there that night. You know the night I'm talking about? Okay. You've slept since then. Okay. So we have zoning in our city, and we had 5 rezoning requests. So we had to have 5 public hearings, 5 staff reports, and 5 considerations, right? So Miss Smith, Lindsay Smith, got up, and she gave the first staff report. She went and sat down, and the council, there was a motion to approve the rezoning and a second, and the council was in the midst of debate. When Lindsay hands me a note, and it says, Mary Lynn, do you think I could do my other 4 staff reports on the other 4 rezonings? Because I need to go to the hospital. I think I'm in labor. True story. Remember that? Oh, so I interrupted the mayor very nicely as the parliamentarian. I said, Mayor, may I suggest that you may want to consider a motion to lay this item on the table temporarily, allow Miss Smith to make her other 4 staff reports because she needs to leave this meeting as quickly as possible if there's no objection to the council hearing the 4 staff reports sort of out of order, if you will, without the public hearings in between. The mayor said, smart man, she was out to hear. He said, do I have a motion to lay this item on the table? Motion second, vote to lay on the table. No discussion about tabling. You don't talk about tabling. Where does it go? When an item is tabled, where does it go? It goes to the secretary for safekeeping. That's what Robert says. It goes to the secretary for safekeeping. Now, if you don't remove that item from the table at that meeting, your secretary is going to put that item on your next agenda. And what it will say on the next agenda is, consider removing from table item blah, 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 tabled at this meeting, motion tabled was this. That's all got to be on your agenda, right? And so you get to that, you can remove it from the table. Now, if you don't remove it from the table at that meeting, then it dies. You won't see it at the next agenda, but you will on the next agenda if you don't remove it from the table. So what happened in our case was Lindsay got up, boom, 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 made her 4 staff reports, went to the hospital, had a baby girl. And what the mayor did after she was through is says, now we will return to the published order of our agenda. I will entertain a motion to remove the item from the table. Motion second carried, picked up on debate where they left off, and disposed, voted on it. It's meant to temporarily set something aside. It does not kill it. It's not supposed to be used to move it to another time. Okay. Now, let's talk about postpone indefinitely. Postpone indefinitely and postpone to a certain time are 2 incidental motions, if you will, where they can stand on their own as an incidental main motion. They don't have to be applied to a pending main motion. Let's say that you never want to hear about police cars again as long as you live. So you get to that item and somebody says, I move to postpone this item indefinitely. There's a second. And what happens if that passes is it's not going to come back to you. Not in the same form. It could come back to you, let's say the agenda item was to buy 6 police cars. Maybe next month it comes back to buy 4, or maybe it's to buy other police equipment, but it shouldn't come back to you in the same form. Now, the difference between table and postpone indefinitely, you can debate the motion to postpone indefinitely, but it has to be limited to the merits of postponing indefinitely. Now, you don't want to shout out, well, this kills it, to the police chief. It's, you're just going to debate the merits of postponing it indefinitely. Okay? And all it takes is a simple majority to pass. Now, postpone to a certain time. That's the one you want to use when you want to postpone consideration to the next meeting. Mayor, I move we postpone consideration to the next meeting. Mayor, I move that we postpone consideration until we can get more information from the fire chief. Mayor, I move that we postpone consideration until the finance committee can take a look. Mayor, I move that we postpone consideration until we receive the consultant's report. It's tied to a date specific or an event specific. Okay? Postpone to a certain time. It can stand on its own as an incidental main motion. Second, majority vote only, and you can debate it, the merits of postponing it to that time or event specific. Not supposed to be, I move to table. I move to postpone consideration to X, not table, because table's coming back. Table's coming back. She's going to put it on that next agenda if you don't get it off the table at this meeting. Okay? So, now, it can be applied to a pending main motion. I move that we buy 6 police cars. Second, Mayor, if it's in order on the precedence of motions, I move that we postpone consideration to our next meeting. I move we postpone consideration until the police chief can get us additional information. Whatever, you've done it. And so it's in order. It can be applied if it fits into the precedence of motions, which it typically does. Yeah. If you have a motion and a motion to amend, and then you postpone it, postpone to a certain time, or postpone indefinitely, which one you want to talk about? Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm talking about the difference. I've talked about lay on the table. Okay.
If they make if a motion is made to lay on the table.
Has to be applied to a pending motion only.
And they don't, at that meeting, they don't bring it back.
Right.
They forget to bring it to us, so I put it on the next agenda.
And you have to word it specifically. Item so-and-so and so-and-so tabled on this date, motion pending. Because table can only be applied to a pending motion. And your agenda needs to state all of that. Whereas postpone to a certain time or postpone indefinitely doesn't have to be. Okay? So those are the differences. Don't do, I move to table to the next meeting. Yes, Richard? Mm-hmm.
Is it supposed to come back that next meeting?
Mhm.
Or if it doesn't come back that
Well, it should. If the council has moved to postpone an item to the next meeting, it should be on the next agenda. They've given direction.
It was like, or like you said, well, on Lindsay's face, she wasn't gonna come back or whatever, but like, we were watching a storm, we were having a council meeting, the hurricane was coming in, and I moved that we table this until we have a chance to go watch the weather.
Okay.
And then.
And you can do that. You can do
I
that.
didn't know if they didn't take it back up, that it would go to the next meeting.
It does, on table only. Now, they don't remove it from the table in that meeting. It goes on the next agenda along with a full recitation of what that pending motion was that got tabled. Okay? And if it's not removed from the table at that meeting, then it's over. Okay? It doesn't come back. Okay? It takes a motion to remove it from the table. That is correct. No, she can put it as one. She can put consider blah, blah, consider removing from the table motion, blah, 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 and consider said motion. It can all be in one. I think it would be confusing if it wasn't. So, and typically you don't need to. Typically you don't need to table because people misuse it. They mean we want to put it off to the next meeting, right? I move that we table this until the next. That's wrong. It's I move that we postpone consideration to the next meeting. You can debate that. Can't debate what you've tabled. And it kind of makes it a little mess, you know?
We've discussed it, they've gotten really good at using the word postpone.
Good, good. Okay, any questions on table, or postpone indefinitely, or postpone to a certain time? Now remember, postpone indefinitely is the one you want to use if you want to kill it and you don't want to see it again. Uh-huh. Exactly. There has to be, it can't be exactly the same. It has to be something different about it. Yes. Indefinitely means just that. But in order for him to come back to you, it's going to have to be something different. Different price, different number, different model. We rebid it. Here's the new bids. There has to be something new about it. New and different about it. Okay. Any questions about these three? Y'all see how they've been misused? Okay. All right, now let's talk about previous question, or I call the question. Here's what you typically see, and tell me if you've seen it. Talk. Mayor, I call the question, or Chairman, I call the question. The typical response is, oh, the question's been called, we've got to move to a vote on the pending question, right? Well, I call the question, or I move the previous question is the proper way to say it, but everybody says I call the question. Cuts off, if it passes, cuts off all debate and forces a vote on the immediately pending motion. So, no one member should be able to say, I call the question, and the question get called forward with no more debate. No one member has the right to control everybody else's rights. So, if you want to call the question, what's it going to take? Exactly. I call the question. Mayor, I call the question. I'm sick of listening to this. I want to go watch the Aggies. Mayor, I call the question. It's going to take a second and 2/3 vote. If you get it, then you say the question has been called. We will move on to an immediate vote on the pending motion to buy 6 police cars with no more debate. You put it to an immediate vote. That's the proper way to do it. Exactly, ma'am.
Say, I call the question.
Well, they don't get to call the question. That would be funny.
Yeah, point of order.
Yeah. And so point of order can only be called by members of the group. The mayor gets to rule on them. The parliamentarian with your permission, and I'm the parliamentarian in my city, I always have this discussion with every new mayor. If I see something wrong, do you want me to politely interrupt? And the way I always word it is I don't say, Mayor, you did that wrong. I say, Mayor, may I suggest you may want to consider XYZ. He says, shut up, no. Then he does what he wants to, The mayor's in charge. So, it would fall to the mayor to just shut him up or hush him or whatever he needs to do. But yeah, they can't call the question. They don't get to call a point of order. They have no rights other than under, here, citizens. They get to be there. They don't have the right to participate in the meeting except for the agenda item carved out specifically for their participation. So, any questions on calling the question? Got it? Okay. I think that's everything. Parliamentary procedure allows for numerous methods of voting. Y'all do roll call votes. I think that's great. You don't have any questions then. We do voice vote. There's 7 of them. Sometimes I have to say to the mayor, Mayor, could I see a show of hands? Because I don't know what to put in the minutes. Okay, that's good. And the mayor can say, let's have a show of hands. And that makes it real easy for you. And it doesn't take as long as another roll call vote. Okay. All right. And then general or unanimous consent, that's what I talked about earlier about silence gives consent. If the mayor says there's no objection, let's take up agenda item 12 first because all these people are here about it. And maybe if you're lucky afterwards, they'll leave. So, voice vote, show of hands, rising vote we don't use really anymore because of ADA issues. Remember that people watching from home have to be able to determine how every single person votes. I love the roll call votes myself. And some charters do require it. My city, we require roll call votes on the budget and the tax rate. But the mayor will sometimes, when it's real controversial, he'll say, and it's his right to say, I'm going to have a roll call vote on this item. That's his right. He's running that meeting. Okay, remember, we can't vote by secret ballot or by proxy. The voting method has to be public. Votes registered in a way that the public can determine how each council member voted. The presiding officer does not need to call for abstentions, although I know y'all do, and that's fine, that's your rule. But when a member does not vote yes or no, he or she has abstained. And I'm going to assume you have a conflict of interest affidavit on file for that abstention. Majority vote is simply more than half of the votes cast. If a vote ends in a tie, the vote fails. 2/3 vote simply means that there were at least twice as many votes in favor of the motion as there were against the motion. So if it's one of your motions that deals with the rights of the member, take how many voted no and double it. If you have that many yeses, you've got your 2/3 vote. It's real simple. There it is. And the parliamentarian doesn't make rules. They give advice. They give opinions. But we never rule. And with that, do we have time or are we done? You can ask anything you'd like. Uh-huh.
When you're in executive session, there's no action, motion in executive session, you're not allowed to take a recess.
No, you can take a recess, in executive session, but you wouldn't do it by virtue of a motion because you can't vote in executive session, but you can rise to a question of privilege and say, Mayor, we've been in here 4 hours and I need to go to the little boy's room or the little girl's room. Yeah,
Brief recess was taken.
From 7:20 to 7:30, a short recess was taken.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't let.
Oh. Teresa, I wouldn't even try that with my counsel, and you know me. But
I was like, football game.
yeah, no. So yeah, the mayor can certainly allow people to take a short recess to go to the restroom or something like that during something important and overriding. You know, if you've been in executive session as long as some of ours run, you're going to need that opportunity. And quite frankly, you know, if it's me, because I'm the only female in the room, I'll hand up a little thing that I've got written on it, Mayor Recess. Go on. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course, certainly while they're on this recess out of executive session, they need to go do their business and come back, not be talking to people. You know, they don't need to stop in the hall and chit chat. They need to go to the bathroom and get back. Sure. Okay, I gave y'all a handout called What Motion Would You Use? We're not going to go over it unless y'all just want to, but you can take that. And then I gave you a handout with your parliamentary terms, a copy of this PowerPoint. But by far your most important piece of paper is this, because we now know how to apply the precedence of motions. We know when they're in order and when they're not. Any questions? Anything y'all want to talk about? Anything unique to Rockport that maybe has been a problem or? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. You wouldn't, paragraph statement. So I read in your standing orders that only one subject should be introduced per motion. You know, sometimes you will get a motion that might have two distinct parts. For example, I move that we buy 4 police cars and 22 rifles. I don't know what you got, but you know, because I like police. I want to make sure I get out of this town with no tickets, you know? Right, Chief? Thank you, thank you. And I love the firefighters in my town. I do. And Brian, they're my pet department. They really are. Yeah. I'm like one of them. I'm like one of the firefighters. But for example, on that example I just gave, y'all can divide that into 2 motions. And you would say that, Mayor, I move the division of the question. Okay? So you would vote on the cars in one motion, and you would vote on the rifles in another motion. Okay, you can do that. You shouldn't have this long drag-on motion that goes on, especially if it's crossing the line of, is it germane, is it not germane? It's got to be germane. Got to make sure that you're not substituting something that's not germane to what's posted on your agenda or to the intent of what the main motion should be. Now, another thing that can be done if somebody does that is you can consider it by paragraph or seriatim, which is like if there's 5 parts to it, you can divide them all. But you really shouldn't do that. You really ought to have a motion that is clear and concise where everybody understands what they're voting on. And you really shouldn't combine really 2 things that can stand alone into one motion. It's really, but if you end up doing it, you can move for division and separate that out. Good question. And let's say you have a comp plan in front of you. You can move from the get-go to consider it by paragraph or seriatim, or by section, if you will. So we're going to consider each section of this big document separately. You can do that from the get-go. You can make that decision up front. And every once in a while we do that. You don't have to, but if you feel like there's things in that comp plan that need to be changed or looked at, you certainly can do that. That's within your purview. Yeah. The city manager is responsible for bringing forward a budget to you, and hopefully you'll adopt the whole thing. But You don't have to. You can separate it out. Richard, I'm sorry. Don't hit me. But you can move to consider the budget in chunks. I think you deserve it for being council member B. Okay, do y'all have any other questions? Yes, ma'am. It's mstrata, STRATTA, at briantx.gov, and Teresa knows how to reach me. We've been friends a very long time, and I love Teresa. So she really works hard and really, really cares about doing a great job for y'all. So. Any other questions I can help y'all with? Any other problems? Any other things? I'll be anxious to hear if y'all decide to change the way you do here, citizens. So, okay. Well, thank y'all so much for having me. I've enjoyed being with y'all. It's been great. And if I can help y'all with anything, let me know. I'm always happy to help. Thanks, Mike. Thank y'all. Hopefully this will be helpful. Pink sheet.
Come back up to,
Did I?
oh, not to adjourn, to go into executive session.
Let me try to pick this off. Did I cover it?
All right.
Mayor, I move that we take a 10-minute recess before we enter executive session.
Any
Second.
debate on that? Done.
Get that, Teresa?
City Council will hold an executive session pursuant to provision of Chapter 551 of the Texas Code, Government Code, in accordance with the authority contained in Section 551.074, personnel matters, to deliberate, appointment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of public officer or employee, the city manager candidates. We are in executive session. It is 7:35. It is 8:48. The city council will reconvene an open session at Rockport Service Center. We are back in regular session. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, you're adjourned. Thank you.